If your AC is giving you trouble this summer and you're located in Lexington, Massachusetts, don't spend another dime on repairs until you watch this. And watching this could literally save you thousands. This is our two-strike rule. It's really just a repair versus replacement triangle, but we use it to really simplify it to make the decision easy for our customers. What I want you to understand that can really help you save thousands of dollars is just because you might have expensive repairs or because the system's not performing that well, or maybe it's just that it's really old, those things in and of itself don't mean that it's time to replace your system. So I don't want you to get bullied into, oh, this guy's telling me it's time to replace it because, it's costing me a lot of money in my energy bills. That alone is not a reason to replace it, okay? But I do want you to be informed because what I don't want my neighbors to succumb to is trying to throw good money after bad. Okay? So watch this and I hope that this can help really simplify the process for you if you're having some AC trouble. There's three components that go into whether it's time to repair versus replace. And that's going to be repairs, how many of them, how frequent, how much. The next component is performance. Is this costing me a lot of money to run? Is it even keeping up? Do I have to throw a window AC in my daughter's bedroom? That's going to be performance. Or maybe it's running like a top. It's super cheap to run and it cools the whole house down, right? That's great performance, right? I love that. This is the big one right here. This is the one that HVAC contractors start licking their chops when they ask you, how old's the AC system? And you're like, oh, it's 12 years old. They're like, cha-ching, right? This is where I want you to be careful. Just because your system's older does not mean that it's time to replace it in of itself, okay? And I want to give you some examples. Let's say you have an older system. Let's just say it's 15 years old, okay? Now, is it time to replace the system just because it's 15 years old? No, that's not a good reason to replace it. Okay, you heard it from me first. That being said, what else do we have going on? Well, let's say in this scenario it's 15 years old, but it started to get some expensive repairs. Okay, $1,000, $2,000. Do you really want to keep putting $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 into a 15-year-old system? Or does it make sense to maybe invest that money into a more permanent solution? But let's say you have a 15-year-old system. It hasn't broken down at all, but it's not really cooling that well. It doesn't seem to cool like it used to. You noticed it's constantly running. And in fact, rooms on the far end of the home, you had to put a window AC. It's just not really comfortable there anymore. Then that's going to give you two strikes here where you're going to have old age and poor performance. And even though it hasn't broken down yet, it might be time to invest that money into a newer system. And the analogy I like to use a lot with that is when you have, let's say, tires that are going bald, when do you replace them? Do you replace them when they pop on the highway and it turns into a safety concern and you're swerving and trying to get over to the part of the road that's like, right? Or do you say, hey, they're starting to go bald. Maybe I could even see the metal, rings or lines in there. It's time to replace it at a time that's convenient for me, not wait until it turns into an emergency, right? It's the same thing with these systems. If you have an older system and it's not performing well, replace it at a time that's convenient, that's not turned into an emergency for you. Okay. Now, what if you have an older system? It's had frequent repairs and a lot of them, and it's had poor performance. Well, that's an easy one, right? That's 3 strikes. Time to get a new system. Don't put any money into this thing. You're just going to be putting good money after bad, and you're not going to really see anything for it. The problem, too, is when a lot of customers do this is every year the price of the equipment and materials goes up. So you might say, hey, let me just wait and buy myself a year, and next year the prices are 20, 30% more than they were last year. It's not the contractor. If you look it up and you can even Google it, the price of raw goods of the equipment and materials have just skyrocketed. And now with like threats of tariffs and things, they've added even more to the cost. Then you have refrigerant changes and government regulations on refrigerant and equipment. All of these things the consumer has to pay for. So Keep all that in mind when you're thinking about this 2-strike rule. If you have 3 strikes against your system, you might want to pay for it now and get it over with, because it's never going to be cheaper than it is today. Okay? But let's use a different example. Let's say it's not 15 years old. Let's say it's 7 years old. Not a spring chicken anymore, but it's not exactly, some old dinosaur beast anymore, right? 7 years old in of itself is not a reason to have to get a new one, right? It's not a reason. But what if it's 7 years old and you've had a lot of repairs? Well, that's starting to get up there in age. How much in repairs? Is it last year was $1,000? This year it's $500. Next year it might be $2,000. You might want to start considering replacement, right? That's getting up there in age, right? But if it's just repairs and the age isn't too bad yet, you might want to say, hey, let me hold off and get a couple extra years out of it. But what if it's 7 years old, repairs are getting up there, and my energy bills are starting to go up? Or it's really not performing very well, or it's loud, it's not comfortable, it's inefficient, then I would say you're going to have high repairs, high performance, or bad performance. It's time to get a new system there. Let's use a different example. Let's say it's 7 years old. It's not quite like brand new, but it's kind of on that weird in between, like adolescent age, where it's not old, but it's not new, right? It's like a teenager, that awkward phase, right? Not really old enough in its own to say you need a new system, right? But you probably will start to see some things starting to break down. Now, what if you have a 7-year-old system and it just seems to not really be performing as well as it used to? Maybe performance has kind of gone down a little bit. Is that time to replace it? I wouldn't say yes right off the bat. I don't think that's enough data there. I would say you might want to try to figure out, maybe there might be some duct modifications that we can make to get you some more life out of this, because I'd love to see you get this to like 17 years. So if there's maybe some simple modifications we can make to make the system run better, I would say invest the money in there, right? But what if it's 7 years old, it does have poor performance, but it's also been costing thousands of dollars over the last few years in repairs, and it's starting to get major repairs? Well, even though it's only 7 years old, I do think in this case you do have 2 strikes against you. It might be smart to start thinking of a more long-term solution, because it is true, if you're having this many problems on a 7-year-old system, most manufacturers give you a 10-year warranty on parts. You're going to be out of warranty pretty soon. In the next 3 years, how much is this going to cost that I'm going to keep spending on repairs, and how much is this going to cost in bad performance when I could take that money and put it towards a permanent solution, right? So what you'll find a lot of times is a lot of shoddy contractors, even though this is only 7 years old, they'll end up putting in a system that's way too big, and that ties directly into poor performance. And so that poor performance can run for a lot of times, but a system that's too big for your home and too big for the ductwork will eventually start running into expensive bills. A lot of times, for instance, you might have a cracked heat exchanger. That's a really expensive bill. You could have a 7-year-old system that was having performance issues because it's way too big for the ductwork and way too big for the home. And now that turns into an expensive repair. And this is absolutely, hey, this is time, even though it's only 7 years old, time to get a new one. So that's the 2-strike rule. Hopefully that helps you out. I want to make sure that you have all the power you need, because I don't want you to get bullied into thinking it's time to replace it just because my system's being older, or just because my energy bills are a little bit higher, or just because I had a little bit of repairs in the last couple of years that I haven't had for a while.